In 1 year, I did more than what the medical system did for me in 15 years to make me change. 0 grams of fat, fat-free, no calories, low calories, it's all the marketing. And everybody goes, oh, this must be good for me. And a lot of people just don't understand. My late 40s and my early 50s, I felt better than when I was in my 30s.
Welcome to the Wiser Than Before podcast, where each episode will get a little wiser. I'm your host, Josh Dodds. On this episode of Wiser Than Before, we talk about how our guest had better health in his 50s than he did 20 years earlier in his 30s, including setting a personal best in a 5K at age 53. Bruce Cooper has a degree in human biology and a number of different health certifications. Like many of us, he had a long health journey to get to where he is today. He was on cholesterol medication for 15 years, and there are a number of diseases that run in both sides of his family that his doctors continuously warned him about. In this episode, he tells us how he overcame all that. He also shares what he does to help his clients get similarly impressive results. For example, the type 2 diabetic who came to him on 7 medications, who eventually was able to get off of all of them. Bruce also shared insights from his own journey that can be quite valuable, like the devastating effect that lowering cholesterol too far can have on your hormones, and how cholesterol-lowering medication tanked his testosterone. Bruce Cooper, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Really excited to talk with you. We were chatting a couple weeks ago when we were setting this up, and you have a story that's near and dear to my heart because it's a similar journey I went on, and I think that a lot of people have gone on, which is you have health issues, maybe medical issues, and do everything you can to resolve them, and then over time you realize hey, what the approaches I'm being given don't make sense. Maybe the explanations don't make sense. And then you really started learning, did a deep dive on your own to learn these, health principles and to really figure out what was going on, which is why your story resonated with me, because that's exactly what I ultimately did. And it's really amazing what you learn and what you find out when you do that. And you realize how much of our current version of health and understanding of health is really, there's a lot of holes in that that picture. So what was the timeline for your own personal health and some of the issues you faced and things you learned?
So for me, it started back when I was about 19 years old. And I'm 53 now, so it's been a little bit of time. I went in for a routine checkup and had blood work done. And what the doctor came back and said is, whoa, your triglycerides are real high, your cholesterol's out of whack, and we really need to do some things to get that under control. And the things that they do to get it all under control, especially back then, was they said, well, you can't eat any fat. Which we now all know was not a great idea, and because if you eat fat, your cholesterol is going to get worse, and you're probably going to have a heart attack. And it resonated with me because I had a grandfather that died of heart disease. I have stroke, and I have diabetes on both sides of my family. Stroke on both sides of my family. Cardiovascular disease. In my family. So back then, it was like, oh my gosh, you got the genes for this, and you're pretty much doomed. And so it scared me a bit. And then I went over probably the next, 5, 7, 8 years. And when you can't eat fat, I ate lean chicken, which was good because I had always been a big workout person. Always lifting weights, and did that have done that for most of my life. So, lean chicken, well, that's, bodybuilders eat, and, you go with that and tuna and stuff and fish. And then when you don't eat anything with fat, at that time they were like, turning to potatoes and rice and tons of different starches. I ate fat-free sour cream. If you ever tasted fat-free sour cream, it was like plastic. It's just not. Fake butter, the fake margarines, and because none of them, they were all had 0 grams of fat. And so that's what we were told to do. I always say, I don't have a sweet tooth, I have 28 of them. But that being said, a lot of those fat free, sugar free, low cal desserts and snacks. What they did to me over time, what I suspect is actually I was getting worse. And then when I was about, I don't know, 26, 27, 28 years old, I went into the doctor and they said, yeah, your numbers are not good. You're in a bad place. You're tracking in the wrong direction. We have to put you on a statin medication. A statin medication, for the people that don't know, is when you have high cholesterol, they want to put you on that to help artificially lower your cholesterol down. And I was like, well, I have to do it. My grandfather died, in his 60s, of heart disease and other complications. And there's diabetes and all this other stuff they said was going to happen to me if I didn't take this medication. And then a couple of years after starting that medication, I started to have a lot of acid reflux. Still trying to eat the right way, and it was still getting worse. And then in that time, I had met my wife, Heidi, who you've spoken to. She's also a practitioner, and she comes from a different angle than I did, and it was more of a non traditional approach where I was very into allopathic medicine. Whatever the doctor said must be right, and that's the thing to do. But everything was getting worse, and then I ran into a point where I was working at the fitness center I was working in, and it was through the first year, and I had this sinus infection coming into like late fall, which was on top of I also had severe seasonal allergies all up to this point. Um, every year, and I live in Texas now. Every year in the fall and in the spring, as the season changes up and back, and as it does here in Texas, the allergies just got worse, and that was a problem also. But fast forward back to, I was at the club, and I went to the doctor, and like they always do, here's an antibiotic, here's a steroid. And I did that for whatever the week or 10 days that I was on, and then about a week later it came back. So what do? When you believe in traditional medicine, you go back to the doctor, and what do they give you? Antibiotic and steroid. And so I went back and did it again. And then a week later, comes back. So I did it a third time. I remember this was probably in December about this time. And I just wasn't feeling good. And I was up talking with some of the other trainers, and one of the girls, crystal around her neck, comes up to me and said, hey, would you be willing to go to my naturopath? And I was like, oh, witch doctor. That was my first thought. Now I do the same thing, right? But I went to this guy, and my wife was, when I told her about it, she was so excited because she was really into alternative medicine and naturopaths and acupuncturists and chiropractors and all this stuff. And so here I go, see this naturopath, and he does all these tests on me. And at the end of it all, he hands me, a couple of supplements and this. I remember this bottle very distinctly. It looked like the old bottles of like transmission or brake fluid, the cone top and the cylinder bottom. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I went home and I said, I'm kind of desperate. And a little side, that's how we find a lot of the people, they try everything and not get there. Well, I was in that boat. And so I drank the brake fluid, which ended up being bentonite clay mixture in there, and took the supplements. And really within like 4 days, everything went away. And I finished the protocol out. So I followed it and took it for however many days or weeks I was supposed to take it. And I hadn't had a sinus infection again. I was like, wait, there's something to this. I've been to the doctor 3 times and getting worse. And I said, if that was how it was with just sinus infection. Well, what's going on with my cholesterol issues, my lipid issues, and my blood sugar's starting to go out of range, um, and then where I was, we were starting to do a lot of blood chemistry testing, and I was like, okay, I'm going to embrace this. I went and got my blood test and looked at it, and then I said, okay, I got with one of our registered dietitian lady I adore so much, and she was a mentor for me for so many years in the beginning. And I said, I'm going to follow this, and I took these supplements, and I did that, um, and things were getting better, like my numbers when I had my blood test after about 6 months. So then I went to an acupuncturist. I went to another traditional naturopath. I did a few things there. Things got a little bit better, but I after a year of changing my nutrition and my exercise, my movement, and my lifestyle, which is what the foundation is for my practice, my numbers were better than in that at the end of that year than they had been in the 15 years prior of being on statin medications and a proton pump inhibitor. Because remember, I was getting that heartburn. And when after I did the blood work and I decided to do the nutrition, lifestyle, and activity changes, I also took myself off the statin. So I fired my doctor. I went and found another doctor um, to work with, and I still see him to this day. In fact, I send some of my clients when they need it to him. But if I go in to see him on a checkup or something's going on, I mean, he'll still ask me, "You want a statin?" Because I'm outside of those traditional reference models, but I'm definitely within those functional reference ranges, which is what I use with my clients. So, I mean, in 1 year, I did more than what the medical system did for me in 15 years to make me change. And those nutrition changes, by the way, I was eating a lot of full fats, good healthy fats, avocado and avocado oil, coconut oil. I got rid of all the vegetable oils and the trans fats, which those trans fats make up a lot of those butters and things that I was eating that have no fat, or that were zero fat. Those, that's pretty much what they were with the hydrogenated oils. And man, so it really made an impact on me. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, I need to help other people because there's a whole missing piece that they're not given in med school. What do they say? I mean, Harvard Medical is one of the most prestigious schools, probably around. And I believe what I was reading was they have 6 weeks of nutrition education in the 8, 10, 12 years that they go to school. It's not enough.
Yeah, and that must be more current because I knew the stat I used to hear was like, there's like 2 hours of nutrition lecture coverage, but I know the schools are now changing that. But even that, like you said, 6 weeks for 8 to 12 years is very small percentage. So that's amazing. So you really, and I totally understand what you're saying. It's like when something changes your life that profoundly, especially your health, because it's your day to day, it's how you feel. It changes your mood, your energy, your outlook, positivity. But it's also a big weight off your shoulders, looking into the future, being like, wow, okay, things are finally improving. It's not this downhill bad news every time, and it's just such a powerful thing to experience. You just want to share it with people, and you're just like, for me, it was like, how is this? It was like the best kept secret on earth. I was like, how is this not common knowledge? Because it's out there. Like it wasn't, I found it in books and other, holistic and naturopathic minded practitioners like you're talking about, but you really want to share it with people, and it's also just kind of like, wow, how did I live so long in this lie or this just total misunderstanding? And there's an easier way, there's a better way, more effective way. It doesn't require meds and things like that. It's just like almost too good to be true. So I definitely understand wanting to share it with other people. So what would you say? You did a few things, which is just amazing, right? I think where some people get hung up is they'll try something or implement a change and then they might not see the results. Now, a lot of people, want to see a result in a week or 2 weeks, or a lot of people are trained from, the conventional medical model that, hey, just take this powerful drug, this powerful pill, which will change your body chemistry and how you feel. It may not be, the best building blocks for long-term health, but that's kind of the mindset people have. So for you, what do you felt made the biggest difference or the fastest difference?
So I think the foundational nutrition was probably one of the biggest things that helped what I was seeing. Because remember, it impacted my cholesterol levels and my blood sugar levels, which for me were big things. And then having that heartburn in there became something else. So when I changed my nutrition, um, I stopped taking the proton pump inhibitors. Um, before I was on that, I mean, I had started on the whole Rolaids and Tums, like Skittles type of thing, just eating them all the time, and it was horrible. So when I changed my nutrition habits and foundationally, I've always been drinking a lot of water. So that's one of the first things I talk my clients on. But then eating enough non-starchy vegetables, so things with a lot of fiber in it, all colors, of the rainbow, having ample protein still. So eating chicken and beef and what have you, fish, limiting the amount of starchy carbohydrates, really limiting or as much of, if not eliminating, a lot of the highly processed and ultra processed foods. Because those are devoid of a lot of nutritional value. And when they're refortified with a lot of that nutritional value, it's a lot of synthetic stuff that your body, it's not very bioavailable, and your body has to do a lot to be able to use it. So,
Okay. So you were eating low fat, but there's still some processed foods or ingredients in there?
well, I was actually eating higher fat. So, but healthy fat. So there was,
Oh, I'm sorry, before you
oh,
made that change.
yeah.
Like
So,
after when you first saw the doctor and he said your cholesterol's high, but before you worked with the dietitian and
right. So
these other things.
I was eating lots of starch because starch doesn't have fat in it. I'd have some vegetables. I mean, I always loved, like green beans or peas, or I always ate vegetables, just not enough. They always say, have a vegetable like with dinner. So put a couple scoops of green beans on your plate or broccoli on your plate, and that's all you eat. And it's really not enough. So I increased that by like 5 times. Is I was eating no less than 5 servings in a day, but usually closer to 7 to 9 vegetables, which really helped my gut microbiome. And it was one of the things that helped impact the heartburn a lot, because that it was pulling stuff through rather than feeding stuff that would have been in the stomach that's not there. So, but yeah, I was eating. What was the big thing in the '90s? It was called Snackwells. You remember I said I didn't have a sweet tooth. I had 28 of them. So there were these little like devil food cookies that had no fat in them, and they were made. It was a serious Frankenfood. But you were like, hey, these are no calorie, no fat, or whatever things are, and you can just eat as much of it as you want. So all of a sudden, you know, your meals of whole foods, real foods, is about this much, and your processed foods is here. And it was what I was cooking even back then. The whole foods I was eating, I was cooking them you know, in Franken oils, highly processed oils and things that really we don't need to be putting in the body for various reasons, but they were pro-inflammatory. So it's no wonder, the dyslipidemia, the cholesterol issues, those things that were happening there. It's an inflammatory issue. Blood sugar is an inflammatory issue. The heartburn is an inflammatory, can be an inflammatory issue, right? All of these things, can be. So when I took out the pro-inflammatory and put in more anti-inflammatory fats, when I, got more omega 3s and balanced my ratios of omega 3s to omega 6s and omega 9s, and got those things in under order, I really think that made a great impact on me. And remember, everything we're putting in our body, right, is what we're using to build every cell in the trillions of cells in our body, and to feed that microbiome. That's the trillions of bacteria that live in and on us. Though that food is foundational, and healthy cells and healthy mitochondria, and we'll go into some of that in a little bit. Really is what, if all your cells are healthy, then all the tissues are healthy and all the organs and the organ systems, and then you're the organism. And so if the basic unit are all healthy, then you're healthy.
Right, right. No, it makes a lot of sense. But I think I wonder how many people out there go through what you did, which is they really make a concerted effort, to eat healthier, maybe even follow what their doctor's telling them. And it's so ironic, right? You were told to, don't eat fats, so you eliminated those, and you're not told. It's amazing you're not told about the processed foods, right? I don't know. Do you see that study? There's a study that came out within the last few months. It was either done by Harvard or reported on, but it essentially concluded that ultra processed foods aren't necessarily bad for your health because there's fiber in them, and it caused quite an uproar in the holistic community. But the truth is, that goes out to the mainstream. It'll get picked up by all the media outlets, and depending on your level of conspiracy theory beliefs, you wonder if how much big food industry pays to have that done and then inserted into mainstream media. But the bottom line is, people, the average person out there, that's the message they get. It's like, okay, yeah, it's okay. There's fiber in this. I remember those snack wells, or I used to eat these granola. I think they were snack wells, but they're like granola bars with fruit filling in the middle. I'm like, okay, great. I'm getting blueberry, I'm getting raspberry plus granola. And at the end of the day, I've found myself too, just exactly what you're saying. Like that, one of the best things you can do is whole food, meaning like no ingredients, or one ingredient on the jar or the label, and that will protect you from a lot of that. But that message, unfortunately, is still not very clear. It's still not the first thing people think about. You do still see a lot of people, thinking they have to cut the fat, and just a lot of confusion about where to start.
Right. And the label is, I mean, that's misleading too, because most people don't pick up the jar or the box and turn it around and read the ingredient list. What they do is they look at the front and it says 0 grams of fat, fat free, no calories, low calories. It's all the marketing. It's the flash, and everybody goes, "Oh, this must be good for me." And then some of the people, if they even know, they turn around and say, "Okay, well, how many calories are in this? How many sugars are in this?" They may look at that, but they don't go down to the ingredient list. And a lot of people just don't understand what they are reading in the ingredient list. So hopefully there's going to be some changes to that, here in the future, and that may help, some people. My biggest recommendation is, you go to the grocery store, stay on the outside. That's where all, the lower processed stuff is, and the whole foods. So, but one of the things you mentioned before, and, talk further about it again, but there, I haven't found a real medication that fixes the problem. When you take that prescription, what it's doing is, if you look at, the alphabet, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, that drug goes in, and if the problem is in like G, it goes in and fixes G. But by fixing G and making the process pick up right there, then the body may not do some of the other things, or if it fixes G, and then maybe B, C, and D don't happen as much. But when our body goes through certain biochemical pathways, there are substrates that come off of there. So when this to this to this makes something else that may be used somewhere else in the body. And so if you're not making those other molecules in the body, then there could be that's where some of those side effects come from, some of the other issues. If we talk about mitochondria and just making energy, that Krebs cycle makes different molecules that go to what's called the electron transport chain. And if you don't make those molecules, the electron transport chain will break down. But that's where most of ATP being energy, is made. So though you make a little bit of energy in that Krebs cycle, that electron transport chain is where most of it comes from. But the Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle, is what makes the electrons, where it pulls the electrons out to drive that other thing. So what I'm saying is if you break down certain pathways, you're not making some of the other things that are needed in maybe another pathway. Does that make sense?
Okay, so you're saying there's these full, complex or multi-step processes that happen in the body, in our blood, and at the biochemical level. And some medication, it's just adjusting one piece in there, and it might change your numbers on a lab, but there's all these downstream effects that aren't considered or helped in that scenario.
Correct. That's exactly it. And so in my case, what was happening with me is they're trying to drive my cholesterol down artificially, and all of a sudden my testosterone levels were really low on the blood chemistry. And so cholesterol is a precursor to all your steroid hormones. So, testosterone. So, you have cholesterol, make pregnenolone, DHEA, testosterone, estrogens, all of those. And cortisol, we've heard about that. That comes out of cholesterol. Progesterone, which is extremely important with women, comes out of cholesterol. So if you lower that too much, you're taking away the building blocks for your steroid hormones.
That's such a great point. It's so like all the sex hormones are downstream produced from cholesterol. And so, just think about how many people are on statins or cholesterol lowering medications and then have hormone problems and probably aren't connecting the two at all, or at least the possibility that they could be connected.
Right. And then, so we all tell our clients, if we see their vitamin D is low, the best way to get vitamin D is from where?
Sun.
Outside in the sun. Yeah. And so what happens there is the sun reacts with the cholesterol on your skin to make the precursors to vitamin D, which is shuttled to the liver, where it's converted to the bioavailable, the form you need to use in the body. But take away that cholesterol, and those issues can happen there as well.
Do you see that with your clients? I'm not sure exactly who's coming to you, but do you get many clients that come in with high cholesterol, or they used to have it and are on a statin, and then you see low D, you see imbalances in sex hormones and things like that? Yeah,
all the time, and it's not just the cholesterol that's the issue, but it's the inflammation in the body and the things that are making the cholesterol not what we want it to be, the particles that we don't want it to be.
Nice. Yeah.
It's been put out that LDL is the bad cholesterol and HDL is the good cholesterol, but neither one of those is cholesterol. They're both proteins that carry cholesterol through the blood, because we don't like fats running through our blood rampantly, because water which our blood is made up of mostly of water, and fats don't mix very well. So the proteins carry them. But it's when we have a lot of inflammation and the particles become these BB-sized particles that can embed in the arteries, that's when it becomes an issue. So if you lower the inflammation and you have less of those BB-sized particles, comparatively to the other particles, the big fluffy ones that are in your bloodstream, then you're at probably a lower risk for cardiovascular disease than somebody that has lower levels of cholesterol, but a lot of them are those BB sized ones that can embed into the arterial walls and cause havoc in the body.
So, what do you think is most important? It sounds like is it inflammation is actually the number one thing that someone should be looking at, and then from there, not even cholesterol level, but more of the particle sizes. Are they low density, tiny ones, or
Yeah, when I look at blood chemistry, I want to know the particle sizes. Total cholesterol is great; it's a number, but it just tells me how much cholesterol is there. LDL is calculated, HDL can be measured, but I want to know those particle sizes to know what's going on inflammation wise with my client. And there's other markers I look at to give me some of those measurements of inflammation and oxidative stress is really where I see a lot of the issue coming from. Um, for instance, we spoke about just a moment ago, the mitochondria, which everybody remembers, from high school biology, is the powerhouse of the cell, and but most people don't understand that apoptosis, which is pre-programmed cell death, starts there. Immune function starts with the mitochondria. Hormone production we discussed. Heme synthesis, which heme is the molecule that carries oxygen in your red blood cells. It's oxygen sensing, cell signaling, so redox reactions in the body. Stem cells, we hear a lot about stem cells in our world now. Stem cell differentiation starts in the mitochondria, and calcium regulation. So it has a lot of jobs outside of just making energy, which is why when I speak in my practice, I just love talking about mitochondria and how to do that. But back to that Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, by virtue of making energy again, which is in the form of ATP in our body, we increase the oxidative stress inside of a cell. Okay, the mitochondria is an organelle inside of a cell. A cell, is a membrane with the nucleus and all the other stuff in there. The oxidative stress increases, and that's okay. We need that oxidative stress in the cell is used to help promote our body's own anti-inflammatory, antioxidant mechanisms that run. So that's okay. But when it gets out of control, how does it get out of control? Well, we eat all these all these pro-inflammatory foods. We're under, I call them the three P's of stress: physical, psychological, and physiological. So, physical exercise can be a form of stress. Psychological, got to get the bills paid, got the kids, got my spouse or my significant other. I got to think about work and the boss and all these other things, things we're juggling every day. That's psychological stress or emotional stress. And then physiological stress, that the reactive oxygen species increasing inside the cell. So that oxidative stress and inflammation that's happening within the cell. And the body is amazing and it can handle that. But when your body doesn't differentiate those three stress types, so all of that increasing that oxidative stress can get out of control. And then, if we have a bucket, one more drop into the bucket makes it overflow. And that's where dis-ease, starts.
Okay. So you're saying there's some oxidative stress is normal, just as part of a mitochondria creating energy. But then there's all these other stressors we're exposed to, and that just multiplies the oxidative stress. And even that, the body can handle for a period of time. But once it hits its limit, then you're doing damage. And so is it the case where if it goes on for long enough, that's where the body will, in a state of dis-ease, and may lead to diseases or symptoms and
Yeah.
other health problems?
Absolutely. And that's where I believe it happened with me.
Okay. Yeah. So your marker, one marker was cholesterol, but you're saying actually it's 5 steps below that, down at the oxidative stress in the mitochondria that then led up to the cholesterol. And I guess it kind of makes sense because you said you ate actually more cholesterol and more fat in the end, but you dropped your numbers. Again, for we talked about some of the reasons, but it wasn't processed food. It wasn't the hydrogenated fats that are made through chemical processing and things like that.
Oh, right. So everything works in a very nice harmony in in the body, and it's when we take all these other things and put them in that we have those issues. But on top of nutrition being foundational, stress management is huge because we have to take care of ourselves emotionally and mentally, and then um, helping uh, the body rid itself of the thousands of toxins we're exposed to. So your body is amazing at detoxifying, but sometimes it needs a little bit more support because that bucket is getting full. So helping support that to help lower it down, and that goes a long way as well. And then the number one thing I have people work on is their sleep habits. You definitely need, we've shown 7 to 9 hours of sleep on average, and a good quality sleep. It can't be you're up every hour. We need to get in deep sleep and REM sleep, so that our body can, because that's where our body heals and repairs itself. So sleep is extremely important, but stress and sleep I really lump together a lot of times, because when you're really stressed out about something, you're wide awake and can't get that restful sleep. So nutrition, sleep, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to ask. Like with sleep, how often do you find it's person could just focus on going to bed earlier, or yeah, being in bed 7 to 9 hours to get that sleep, versus how often do you find that someone, even if they did that, they still struggle with sleep, and what do people like that need to do?
There's some little tricks that they can work with. I mean, obviously, initially, taking certain supplements can help relax the mind. There's devices that can help with your body getting into those sleep modes. Wearing glasses that filter out, blue light because we're on screens. I mean, all day long now. Laptops and TVs and cell phones, and everything has those screens. So filtering out those stimulating lights, especially after the sun is starting to set, are big things, and things people can do. But maybe some meditation before bed, some deep breathing. All of those things can help. But making sure the temperature in the house, in the room, is good. It should be a little bit cooler, when we go to sleep at night, and not so warm. And um, uh, having um, the lights off in the room, and I mean, and you can go as far as saying, okay, we're turning Wi-Fi off, because the EMFs from that can disturb us. I mean, we can go through a lot of stuff. Some other things that can help is around sundown, standing with your back turned to the sun, letting the sun hit you from behind, and it helps your eyes and your body, the cells, because our cells sense it all. Know that this is time. It's time to wind down. Um, Not starting big mental strenuous type activities very late. Stimulating, I guess, would be a better than term, because we don't want to really stimulate going to bed. before we go to bed. We want to start to wind down. Reading a book is good, things like that. And hey, I'm guilty with, sometimes I'll flip through the phone later, and I try to turn it down, but we all get that. And some of us are definitely more sensitive than others, when it comes to that.
Right, right. Well, those are great suggestions. I mean, that's a whole list, and what I like is people can pick and choose from that and apply. But I find, again, going back to what I said earlier, like the way we're kind of trained in to think about health or health improvement and in Western society is like you just do one thing. There's one answer, snap your fingers, one pill to do it. And I mean, there are definitely pills that will knock you out and help you sleep. But in terms of making more natural, holistic health changes, I've found that it's more of a compounding of a few things, but they're all pretty simple. But you may need to do to stack two, three, four of them on top, and that could become very powerful versus, okay, I got in bed an hour earlier tonight and shut the lights off, but I'm wide awake. Why is this isn't working? I got to go back to the pill. So yeah, there's a lot of things you gave there that people could try, and the truth is, doing one of them might not move the needle, but two, three, four of them probably will.
But I always recommend start with one, perfect that. I do a lot of habit-based coaching with my clients, because one of the things we know, changing habits is extremely difficult, especially when you have some bad habits. And so, working through that, doing one thing good for a period of time until you really get that habit down, is the best. Sometimes when you throw too much at it at once, it gets overwhelming. There are people that can handle it. There are others that are like, "Whoa, I'm okay. I sleep fine." A lot of times, people don't know that, because we get so used to our dis-ease, that it almost becomes normal, and it's not. It's not normal to have to drink 12 cups of coffee to get you through a day, those types of things. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing what our normal is here. It's totally crazy. The more I've gone on my own health journey and reflected back, I'm like, what normal? Or I had a guest earlier in the week who said like normal is not common. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. But just the common symptoms that most people deal with, that like, again, good energy, like that. If you ask 10 people, how's your energy? You feel full of energy, full of a life, fully alive every day, ready to get after it. Maybe 1 out of 10 will say it. Like if anyone said that, you'd be like, it's kind of weird. You do a double take, or what kind of caffeine pills are you on? And so it's just, what people have become used to. But with I really agree with what you said about habits, doing them one at a time, and that's really, really cool that that's part of the work you do. The more I do this, I feel the coaching aspect is just such a huge piece. And I feel like, like 10 years ago, I think health coaches would get a real hard time. Like, oh, you're a health coach. What do you know? You're not a doctor. But the truth is, you could give someone the best information in the world, and if they can't implement it, if their habits are the opposite of that, it's worthless for them. But if you can help, if they can get help through coaching and effectively implement it, some very simple things can make huge differences. So I'm thinking of a person who's struggling with their health. They're a little frustrated. They want to feel better, want to change it. So when you give them one habit, a lot of times, people got some work to do. Honestly, they got 2, 3, 4, 5 decades worth of poor health to unwind. So this one first habit, they might not actually feel that different. So how do you help people navigate the balance between not overwhelming them with 10 new things to do, just starting with one, but also understanding that the first thing they do, even for a few weeks, they might not get relief from their symptoms? Because I find that's where it's like really finding the sweet spot. That's why I find coaching is valuable. Because if you do too much, it just overwhelms people and nothing will stick. If you do too little, people start to lose motivation because they don't see a change, and they kind of go back to the pill idea.
so when I'm working with clients, I do a lot of. So my job is to educate my clients, so that I tell everybody, I have the worst business model in the world. I need to get you to a place where you don't need me anymore. Um, it's actually horrible, right? But that's what it is. Is I feel like I'm here to help educate my clients, so that they have a good understanding of like what's real out there, what's marketing, what's what they should trust. They're allowed to be their own advocate for their own health, that they can question their doctor. Um, when a doctor says, "Here, take a pill," why? Why do I need it? It's not because you said so. You're not my mom and dad. This is, why do I need to do this? And so when I'm coaching them, education is first. Then I'm here to help hold them accountable to whatever we're doing. And that becomes important because I like my clients to choose what they want to do. What habit are we going to work on? Here's a laundry list. I've got, I think, like 30 habits I want to take every single one of my clients through. And, but if they choose which one, I may suggest, hey, we have some foundational ones. Like water is very foundational. If you're drinking 8 ounces of water a day, and you're drinking sodas and teas and alcohol and all these other things, and you're not getting good intake, well, we got to start there. So I kind of sometimes I'll push them a little bit over there, but I want them to choose, because then when I say, hey, you said you were going to do this, why didn't you do this, then that accountability is there. And then it's here as a coach to motivate them. Okay, you want to lose this weight. Hey, you want to balance your blood sugar. Hey, you want to do X. Let's go do it. I'm your biggest cheerleader and support. Let's get you there. So so it starts there, and then it's like, hey, here's the list. We got a lot of stuff to work on, or maybe we have a few things to work on. But let's let you pick it, and then we break it down, and to more, well, an atomic level. um, I used to try to coach and keep everything at a lower level, and then I read a book that really, I was like, wow, I do a lot of these things, and man, here's some things I can even do better, called Atomic Habits. It's by James Clear. Fantastic read to show how we can break it down. Because for instance, if we want someone to go, work out, and they're just not going to the gym, they have a gym membership, they're just not going. So maybe it's, let's break it down. What can you do that we can build on that'll eventually get you in that building? Or water. I had a client, extremely successful, was a partner in his own firm. I mean, had it all together. Loved cars. Had a big garage, a workshop. Had all this, and he wanted to be healthy, wanted to have more energy, and water is foundational for all of it. So how much water are you drinking? I'm not drinking, basically any water. So we wanted to just build them up. So you're not going to go from I'm drinking 8 ounces to 100 ounces. So he chose, let's try to get, it was like 40 or 60 ounces a day. Fantastic. Couldn't do it. And it took us literally probably a couple of months till we got there. But one of the things, we had to keep backing it down. And what we ended up doing is, in the morning, he would get up, and this he would do. He would go to his home office, he'd go to his car, he'd, his briefcase, his workshop, his bedroom, and he'd put a bottle of water in each one of those places. And so, a couple of them in the car. So he'd have stuff to take to his office, things like that. And once he strategically placed all these water bottles around, he started drinking them because they were there. He would see them. But he would get up in the morning and go sit in his home office and check on a few things, and then leave his water there and go on, and he'd forget it. Or maybe he'd carry it to his car, and then he'd leave it there. It never moved with him. So once we put it in places, we were able to do that. So I think Clear calls it habit stacking, but it's like start one habit and then build off of it until you achieve what you're trying to do. And then we know those behaviors lead to the outcomes on those behaviors lead to the goal outcomes, which could be lose weight, control your blood sugar, whatever that is.
Hey there. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. But you know what? I want to bring you even better content in the future. One way you can make sure that happens is by hitting the follow button on your phone in Apple Podcast, Spotify, or whatever app you prefer. Now, if we're being honest with each other, you and I both know there's no way you're going to do this later. So let's take 7 seconds right now, and I'll walk you through the process. Pull out your phone, unlock it, and open Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the listening app of your choice. Now search for Wiser Than Before Podcast and hit follow. In Apple, that's the plus sign in the top right corner. And in Spotify, it's the button with the word follow just below the logo. That's it. You're all done. Doesn't it feel good to cross an item off your to-do list? Thank you for doing that. By hitting that follow button, you are actively bringing better guests and content to this podcast. Now, let's get back to the show. Yeah, I love Atomic Habits, and it's such a cool, it's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that if I do something this small, like set out water, think of the book he uses the example, you just set out your gym clothes. You don't even go to the gym, just start setting them out, the night before. And it's hard to wrap your mind around, like, if I just get this started, like eventually it'll lead to what I want to do. But that's a great example.
But it sounds so silly, right? To lay out your gym clothes and not go to the gym. But I think mentally it ends up sounding silly to the person trying to do it. And they're like, well, I'm just going to put my clothes on. And then maybe they don't go. But then eventually they're like, I'm dressed for it. Why not go? And just make that effort. So yeah, it's so awesome though when those habits change and you see them come into play. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It's really fun because people struggle so much, to do, you name it, drink more water, go to the gym, change their diet. So this method it's a way more accessible way. It's you don't have to willpower and force your way to do it. You're just like, what's the smallest, easiest way I can start? And then it builds over time. And it really, it becomes more fun because you start getting results and you can do it other places in your life.
Well, and then when people start seeing that, they start doing more things to drive their health. And remember, we talked about my story at the beginning. I had a coach. I spoke to one of our dietitians, where I was working, and she helped me through the process. So I think everybody needs a coach at some point. So it's a good thing.
It's so invaluable and like underrated. And I feel like some people kind of roll their eyes like, oh, coach, I really need it. But to what you just said, like, it's such an important thing. It's your health. People find it so like hard to do. Like, let's be honest. Like every year, New Year's resolutions come around, people set it, and then it's just kind of classic that by February, gyms are halfway empty. By March, they're 25% for who signed up, and so the truth is, it's not. People don't find it that easy to change the habits, and having a coach or just anybody outside yourself with that accountability, it really can add to the motivation and keep you going with it long enough for something to stick. I agree. So I want to circle back to maybe your story, but maybe it's Heidi, your wife. But when we spoke earlier, you talked about adrenal fatigue, and you kind of looked into that. It's something that's spoken about very commonly. I mean, many people struggle with their energy, and then when your energy really tanks, people come to this idea of adrenal fatigue. But you've got a different view on it and related it back to the mitochondria, which you were talking about earlier. Was that part of your story or Heidi's? And tell us how you think about it now.
That was so, well, it's kind of part of both of our stories. It was her. So she went through a really rough patch several years ago. Gosh, it's probably longer than several years ago now. But and in the natural health world, the holistic health world, the functional medicine or whatever, you were hearing this term adrenal fatigue, and it was being thrown around like, I mean, I heard it everywhere. And one day, and I was using it, and but they said she has adrenal fatigue, and she was not doing well. She was having a hard time, getting out of bed and getting through the day. And as her spouse, it broke my heart. Right, it was painful. And so I was like, we're going to fix this. But something, yeah, you get that gut feeling, something's just not right. I was having that on this adrenal fatigue, and I went and probably used it for a few years. And I was like, but something's up. And so, being, human biology and having, I mean, they're old texts, and I mean, there's stuff in the text there have been studies that have come out that have, changed the way the texts are probably written. But I started pulling out old textbooks that I still had, and I would go to the library and go to the bookstore, and I was getting other stuff, and I was like, something is missing. She doesn't have energy. She's fatigued, and that's not just your adrenal. And I was like, man, what's going on? So I was up in the company I work for in Minnesota, in a big auditorium, and there were about a dozen people in there in the nutrition division, and we had a gentleman was standing in front of the room, and we were revamping how we were doing our blood chemistry, and how we were interpreting it and reading it. And I'm taking notes, and I'm doing the whole thing. And then he said something, and like, I sat up straight, my eyes went wide, and I was like dialed in. And he said adrenal fatigue is dumb or bogus or non-existent, or maybe he used a different term. But he basically said, what organ gland in your body gets fatigued and just stops working? Man, I was like, that was like resonated so much with me, because for the months leading up to it, I've been doing a lot of reading, and reading on the mitochondria and on the cell and what's going on and what could be hampering it. And then he said mitochondrial, let's talk about mitochondrial dysfunction. And I definitely, didn't say it exactly how he said it. But and his name is Dr. Brian Walsh. He's absolutely amazing. I don't want to steal what he said. I've learned so much. He has mentored me in interpreting labs, and in my own business self. So I think he's absolutely amazing, and such a great knowledge. And man, if I had as much information in my brain as he did in a quarter of his, I'd be one of the smartest people around. He's just awesome. But he said that, and I was like, yes. And so I dialed in, and then I refocused a lot of my, with the research I was doing, and what was going on. And that's where, we find out, hey, the mitochondria does so much more than just, make energy. And she had all these other issues that were going on, as well, that just, almost all of it led back to just mitochondrial health. And so, we started, working with supplements, and working with different ways of. She was a big exercise person, and so for her not to be able to do what she was doing was heartbreaking. And so we started working on all of these. Just different ways of exercising, different sleep hygiene stuff, and getting through her day, and supplements to take, and redoing eating, and trying different eating techniques, like go low carbohydrate, or a lot of keto, or just seeing what fit in with her. But going through that's where I found out, and I'm like, the mitochondria, again, We knew it as the powerhouse of the cell. That's where energy production is done. And if you look at the structure of the mitochondria, there's actually, like, the cell has one membrane around it. The mitochondria actually have two, one on the outside and the inner membrane, the outer membrane, the inner membrane, but they're very similar to what the cell membrane is. And if you think about what makes up that, the cell membrane is made of something called a phospholipid bilayer, which is basically a phosphorus and a fat that goes in and has a little tail on it, and kind of sits this way, and um, so it's, keeps things from going in and out of the cell that shouldn't. And the mitochondria has a very similar membrane around it. And so, what's the membrane made out of? Well, it's mostly, those lipids and cholesterol and some proteins that act as transporting mechanisms. So, well, let's make sure you're getting the right stuff in your body, and let's make sure we're quelling the inflammation so all the stuff, works in those membranes. And so we were changing, nutrition and, like I said, supplementation to help that. And we promoted a physiological process in the body called mitochondrial biogenesis, which is a fancy term for saying making more mitochondria, or getting rid, doing things to get rid of the bad mitochondria, replacing it with healthy, good ones to really uh, up upregulate that. And I mean, you can do that with exercise and caloric restriction, and modulating your calorie intake can help. Temperature. You see a lot of people doing these cold plunges now, but you can do some things to quell that inflammation, getting rid of excess reactive oxygen species, or ROS, or the oxidative molecules that I was talking about earlier. That's really pro-inflammatory. And then, promoting certain things to help in there. So different supplements like the PQQs and the ALAs, magnesium, making sure she's getting the right amounts of certain things into her body. And it really, over time, I mean, again, it didn't happen, in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but over time she started getting better, and she started having more energy to get through her day, and doing some other things. But that was really really big. But if we do stuff to help heal the mitochondria, things like people that are going around with adrenal fatigue, they start getting better. They start having more energy through their day.
So I want to zoom back out here for a moment and go back to where your story started. You talked about having family history that's concerning, that comes up in doctor's appointments that get talked about. You got some blood markers that get flagged, very common, lipids, cholesterol. What are, is what you see now from either the clients you work with or what you see out there? What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people come in with that are, just say, blocking their health or keeping them from getting, where they want to go?
For me personally, I see a lot of people that want weight loss. And I see a lot of people that I just call it blood sugar regulation issues. The common terms you hear out there, like type 2 diabetes and things like that. But, um, you know, I if I move more and eat less, that's how I'm going to lose weight. That's a big one. It's all about calories in, calories out. And we really don't need to pay attention to the thousands of biochemical processes that happen in the body every second of, every minute of every day, right? So that can be a misconception, that I can eat anything as long as it's, um, as long as my calorie output is more than my calorie intake, and I'm going to lose weight. There is a piece of that energy balance equation that you do need to have, but if you're having a lot of pro-inflammatory foods, and that's really where the makeup is, that you're just not going to get past there. You're going to get stuck. If you're not looking at the microbiome in the gut, you could get stuck. There's a ton of stuff. My doctor said I need to take this medication for the rest of my life. That's one that I laugh at a lot because I've had a lot of clients, including myself, come off their meds. Look, I don't take clients. I tell them right up front, I am not going to take you off your meds. I am not a doctor. I don't prescribe. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm just going to help you support your body in a way that you could work with your physician, hopefully, to come off of them. I had a client that was on 7 different medications, overweight, very overweight, blood pressure medications, several blood pressure medications, several lipid medications, he's type 2 diabetic. We worked together. It's probably a good part of a year, maybe a little more. His doctor, he went in, we ran his blood work. I went, you need to take this to your doctor. Go talk to him about the meds you want to be on and really don't want to be on. And he went in and the doctor took him off every one of the medications but one. And he said, I can't in good conscience take you off every single one of them right now.
Gotta leave you on one.
I said the only one that he left him on, I believe, was one of the statins. And I looked at him and I said, well, it's your choice to work with your doctor. And he said, well, I'm not taking it. And I said, I can't tell you that, but I mean, he knew, and has done well ever since. I remember that story and it just makes me laugh because it's like I can't in good conscience take you off of all 7 medications. I can take you off of 6 of them. But there was nothing valid there, and he kept it off. So I don't believe that. Another one is your genetics is not a death sentence, or you're not predisposition to follow what your family tree has. For instance, I had diabetes on both sides of my family. I had cholesterol issues on both sides of my family. I had stroke on both sides of my family. I had, diabetes on both sides of my family. I had heart disease on, I believe it was just one side of my family. But all of these things, I had. I mean, I'm not there yet. I'm not predispositioned to have all of those diseases. Now, could I have a stroke? Could I have a heart disease? Sure, but anybody can, right? But we can only do what's best preventatively and live our lives. But I'm not on any of those medications. And I have felt, like I said, I'm in my late 40s and my early 50s. I felt better than when I was in my 30s. When I was in my 30s, it was I mean that's when I was on all those meds and coming off of them and trying to revamp. I was 39, 40, 40, 40, 41 when I really made all of those changes. What was I, 39 when I started? Well, yeah, so it was the early 40s. So I had all these issues. Um, and it affected my life. And now, like my cholesterol numbers are better than they've ever been, even as a 19-year-old. And because I was on the medications, because I went to see a doctor, life insurance premiums are through the roof for me. Had I had the numbers I have now and never went on a medication, my premiums would be a few bucks here and there. And it's crazy because I had that once. It's under control. I feel great. When I lift in the gym, I lift more. I'm running fast. I mean, I'm not a big runner. I don't like running, but I mean, I just put my fastest mile out in my whole life.
No kidding. In your 50s.
Part of that's because I've trained for it, but yeah. But part of that is I've trained for it, and the other part of it is I've changed all these other nutrition and lifestyle habits. Now, Josh, I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't. I like ice cream. I'll have ice cream sometimes, but it's not every single day. You know what I mean? it fits into whatever plan I'm in. But I've done like years ago when our son was young, we went past, I forget what it was. Weren't eating there, but we ran into a McDonald's, and it made me gag. I had not eaten foods like that in so long that I remember in my 20s, I'd like smell McDonald's, and it was like Pavlov's dog, and I'm salivating. And now it's like your taste buds, your senses, they do change over time. And if you start eating, I hate using the word clean, but if you start eating in that, what we think of clean, low toxin food, whole foods, raised, and grown with without all the synthetics and things like that, it was gross. So your senses and your body will change as you're not numbed to some of those foods. But there's certain things that nowadays I like. I remember when I was younger, a Kit Kat bar used to taste really good. I remember my son going trick or treating, bring me home one. I was like, "Oh, that's so exciting! I haven't had one in years. So I'm going to have one." And I took a bite out of it and had to throw it away because it was just overly just didn't taste good. It was too sweet, didn't taste good. It was weird, But that was something like in my younger days I enjoyed. So things will change when you get your body back to that reset point. Um, it's crazy, but not having all of those things in my life, I feel like my workouts are better. I feel stronger. I mean, my deadlift, my squat, my benches, 1 rep maxes have gone up now, more than they were, even 20 years ago. Like I said, I ran a mile, ran my fastest 5K. And I'm not a runner. I hate running. I really don't like cardio. I do it because some of that exercise can help increase, your volume of oxygen that you can bring in, which in turn can help other things. So,
wow, very cool. It's just a great story you have. Like I said at the beginning, from being faced with some of these health challenges that are super common and what you did with it over time to continually look deeper, and then eventually really educate yourself, become a professional in the area, and then to hear hitting personal bests in your 50s, and that you could still have your ice cream and do that too, it's great. It's a very hope-filled message, and I know a lot of people out there want better health, want better energy, just to feel better, and it's really important for them to hear stories like this and know that's possible. And appreciate you coming on and sharing all the insights today that people could take away and implement right away if they want.
It's so awesome that you've had your own journey too and gotten around past it. So hopefully we can inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, I hope so. And hopefully this conversation does it. But Bruce, thanks again for coming on. It was great talking to you and hearing your stories. And obviously you have a lot of knowledge. I feel like maybe I have to have you come on and teach a blood chemistry class with us at some point. But appreciate you sharing your story and some of your knowledge.
Absolutely, Josh. It's been a pleasure to come on. Thank you.
Hey, real quick. Bruce and I were having such a good time chatting on the podcast. We never got around to sharing where you can find him. So you can find Bruce on his website at cooperhealthsolutions.com. That's Cooper, COOPER, healthsolutions.com. And you can also find Bruce on Instagram at Bruce Cooper ND. N as in Nancy, D as in dog. Bruce Cooper ND on Instagram. Hey there. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you feel you're walking away wiser than before. I want to bring you even better episodes in the future. One way you can make sure that happens is by rating this podcast. The more of you who rate this podcast positively, the better guests I can bring you. Since you and I both know you're not going to do this later, I'll walk you through the 10-second process right now. All you have to do is follow along. Take out your phone and unlock it. Open up Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever app you listen on, and search for Wiser Than Before Podcast and click on the show. In Apple Podcasts, you have to scroll down towards the bottom, past the most recent episodes. When you get to the ratings and reviews section, click on the blank stars to rate. In Spotify, beneath the logo and name of the show, you'll see 3 horizontal dots. They're just to the right of the bell and settings icons. Click those 3 dots, and the second option is to rate the show. Hit the blank stars and fill them in. All done. You can cross that off your to-do list and start looking forward to even better episodes in the future. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week, even wiser than before.